The city of Hamilton, where I record this podcast, is situated upon the traditional territories of the Erie, Neutral, Huron-Wendat, Haudenosaunee, and Mississaugas. This land is covered by the Dish with One Spoon Wampum Belt Covenant, which was a nation-to-nation agreement between the Haudenosaunee and the Anishinaabe to share and care for the resources around the Great Lakes. Hamilton is home to many Indigenous people from across Turtle Island, and I recognize I must do more to learn and acknowledge the rich history of this land so that I can better understand my role as a settler, as well as a neighbor, partner, and caretaker. I also stand in solidarity with the murdered and missing Indigenous women, girls, transgender, and two-spirited people, and all those who seek justice on their behalf. Miigwech. Thank you. Welcome to the arena, where sometimes the hardest part is showing up. My name is Linda McLaughlin. Thank you for being here. For many of us, the year 2020 drove home lessons about what's important. For Kelly O'Haney, she experienced a battle for her life, unrelated, but certainly impacted by the pandemic. Thank you for listening. This is episode 26. Nice to see you again. I created a little intro for you, so maybe I'll throw that out and then we can get started. Kelly O'Haney, you're a sister and daughter. Are you a mom?
I'm a mom.
And you're a mom. There you go. How many kids do you have?
Just one.
Just one.
She's delightful.
One's enough sometimes.
Yeah, I hear that.
So you're a sister, a daughter, and a mom. As a teenager, you were a gifted athlete and student before a car accident and head injury radically changed your performance in school. You ultimately dropped out of high school, but weren't out for long. You fought your way back and finished school to become a teacher. You taught in an economically disadvantaged neighborhood and were recognized as Teacher of the Year. You've been teaching for over 30 years. You have been a multi-sport athlete. You've played soccer, you ran marathons, you cycled, but then your body craved a more healing exercise regime, which began your journey as a Pilates instructor. And after teaching for a time, you also then became the co-owner of that Pilates studio. Then about 9 months ago, in the midst of the COVID pandemic, you began to have some severe neck pain. And after several trips to the hospital and misdiagnoses, you ended up in emergency surgery. You had an infection in your spine, and you were suddenly paralyzed from the shoulders down. Welcome to the arena, Kelly.
Thank you so much for having me.
You're welcome. Did I get all of that right, or were there some misunderstandings?
No, that was just about it in a nutshell, I would say. Yeah, it's funny when you talk about all those things, it almost seems like it happened to someone else, but yet it faintly resonates with me too. Being an athlete, and when I was younger, and I had a car accident where there was a concussion, a severe concussion, and I disengaged from school quite a bit and dropped out. So that would be a true statement.
You came back ultimately to school. You went to a post-secondary institution where you caught up with high school?
Yes, I did. I went to local JC and I bumbled my way around there too. It wasn't like right away I had this light bulb. I still was struggling. And it wasn't until I got to university that I found my people, as you would say. And all of a sudden, I was really thrilled in learning. And I continued on and got my credential and then went back for my master's after that. And I started teaching in, like you said, an impoverished neighborhood. And I really ended up with some kids that really needed me. And I just had such empathy for struggles, or even, I guess, what you would call maybe the troublemakers, because I got that. I understood that part of people. And I wanted to have them see through my eyes what they could be. And that's really what I got excited about, is to really try to get these kids to turn around and see their worth and see that they could do a lot of things they didn't think they could. And I eventually got on to teach a class called AVID, which is basically taking those kids that just don't have what it takes, maybe a family that's not gone to college, or maybe just whatever troubles they may have, and give them the skills to get into high school and get through to college. And I've seen a lot of kids be very successful. So it's just constantly giving back to me. It's a very rewarding thing.
Tell me a little bit more about AVID. What was that program about specifically?
This program has actually been around for, I believe, 40 plus years. A woman in Claremont, San Diego, had inner city kids being bused into regular upper class neighborhoods, and there was this disconnect. So she wanted to make this classroom for kids that really needed that extra support. So when I found out about this training, I went to in, I think, 2001. It reinvigorated my teaching again. It just gave me more skills and more things to go in and try to help kids that are struggling so they don't see or find the need to drop out and end up where I was struggling. And it's a very structured but very warm family-like environment. The classroom is a place where you're safe and you can ask questions, and we use Socratic methods to talk about complex ideas, and we really just treat these kids like adults and they start acting like adults. It's just an incredible thing to see.
Yeah, it sounds phenomenal. Sounds like you made a huge difference in some young people's lives at that time.
On the other hand, they continually make imprints and just make changes in my life. Anything that I have to go through, if they can get through the things they've gotten through, I just feel like I have to continue to push through things to make sure that I can be a shining example of that person that never gave up on them or anything else.
What was the dinner conversation like in your household when you were growing up?
There wasn't a lot of talk. When my dad got home, we were to stay quiet for a little bit so he could acclimate himself back into a house full of kids. I shouldn't say full of kids, with the two of us. So when we did get conversation going, it typically was around sports. My dad loved sports, and I believe he might have wanted a boy, but he got two girls. And so he didn't miss a beat. He treated us just like he would a son and had us out there in the front yard getting pelted with ground balls and just learning the art of never giving up and always trying your best. So if we did talk about something at the dinner table, it might have been sports.
What event in your life has had the most profound impact on you?
I have suffered from depression. I went through a divorce and found myself a single mom. And I was a teacher, so I wasn't exactly rolling in money. I had to make things work, but I really fell into what I considered a pretty dark time where I just was crying and just unhappy. And a wise friend had told me, you already know the water's coming in, just let it rise over your head, stop splashing and just be, and you'll be okay. And first off, I thought it sounded ridiculous, but then I thought, I'm going to give this a try. Here's bottom. What can we do but only float to the surface at this point? So it was an epiphany that this is rough, but we're going to have to put our pants on and get out the front door and get something going. And so I got back into running and I ran, and I just found myself getting lighter every time I did that. And it just kind of opened some doors for me. It just seemed with positive energy that I gave out, it started to come back into me. It was a life-changing experience.
You had been a runner prior to that, right?
Yes.
This was something you were coming back to.
Yeah, I was running, but not to the degree in the enjoyment that I did once I got back out there again. I just felt lighter, and I don't know how to explain it. This was just pleasure to me. And honestly, at this point in my life, if I only want to get back to one thing, it would be that, just to be able to get out there and just run again. In fact, I went out running to try to shake up my body to see what's this pain in my neck going, what's happening. And running was always a way that I shook things out.
So 9 months ago, you were reasonably healthy. Obviously, all of us were worried about the COVID pandemic. In fact, had your aunt passed away just prior to this?
Yes, it wasn't from COVID, but I did lose her a few weeks prior to this all happening. We'd spent several weeks visiting her in the hospital, and so we lost her, and that was rough, of course. And this happened right after that. And that's when everything started getting locked down. We literally were able to finally get to see her up until just when they really locked down the hospitals. And so when I entered the hospital, there was nobody coming in to see me, which is not really, I don't want to sound like somebody should feel sorry for me, but it was just strange being in a hospital. And I clearly had no idea really what had just happened to me. So it was not a good time, but it's never a good time to go in the hospital.
So you started to have some neck pain.
No, there was almost a sharp pain in my neck. I thought maybe it was some kind of nerve that was being pinched. Because I'd been on Zoom with my students for about 2 or 3 weeks, I thought maybe it was just being on the computer for such a long time. Because teaching 7th grade, you're never sedentary. You would get eaten alive if you were. So I just thought maybe it was because I was just stuck. So I thought,
Yeah.
let's get out and go for a run, go for a bike ride. And it just progressively got a little bit worse. Not a little bit worse. I've not felt pain like that before. You figure it's your cervical spine and there's an infection on it. And then your brain's right there to just receive all those pain impulses. So it was excruciating.
You went several times and they didn't figure it out. They kept sending you home saying, yeah, no, we're not sure what this is, or it's just a pinched nerve or something. And
I guess they took my diagnosis because all they did was take an x-ray and then sent me home. And then the next time they said, well, we took an x-ray, here's some more pain meds, sent me home. And then finally, I want people to learn at least this from me. Be your own advocate, because I should not have been sent home the first day. And I just listened and passively left. But the third time I had called in a friend to speak that had some connections to the hospital. I said to her, there is something wrong. I need some help. And she called down to the hospital. And when I went in, I was seen, I was heard. And then they went in with an MRI and found out there was a mass on my cervical spine. And they had to go in immediately to figure out the problem because I was at that point septic.
wow.
And yeah, it would have started going to my organs.
Oh my God. You are so lucky that you were able to catch it in time, right? And the next step was death.
Yes. I didn't really find out how near that was until honestly, I think I'm finally, this last few weeks, since maybe I'm talking about it, it's finally hitting me that this isn't just an inconvenience. This was a very traumatizing experience to my body, and that I need to love it back to health.
So you woke up in the hospital. What was your circumstance then?
They had me on quite a bit of pain medicine, so I don't remember much at the first week. I was paralyzed from the neck down, and I couldn't push a call button. I couldn't ask for help. I wouldn't want to wish this on anybody. It wasn't a good time.
And weren't allowed to have anybody around you to help or to advocate for you, as you said.
No, I remember vividly sitting and watching the clock for 2 hours, just wondering how long it would be before somebody would come in and check on me. But I guess if my vitals were okay, nobody would be alarmed to come check on me other than to make sure the necessary medicines were being given and that sort of thing. And during a pandemic, I'm sure there was reason for that. Maybe people were busy.
What does living a courageous life mean to you?
I can only give an example. Some people have said to me, I can't believe how much or how hard you're trying, or they just couldn't believe what I was going through and putting myself through, because my sister would periodically post my stages of getting better. And I just looked them in the eye and said, what else would you do? I said, what are my other choices? And they said, oh, I would have given up. And I thought, that's not even in my vocabulary. I guess having lived as long as I had and what I've gone through, I'm not giving up now. This is just not acceptable. Not to mention, my students knew I went into the hospital. They knew what happened. And what kind of example would I be if I didn't do everything I could to get back to where I was? So to be courageous would be being determined. And I've always placed goals in front of myself. And I guess that's what I just did here. I set a goal in front of myself and said that I'm going to walk into my parents' house at Christmas. And that was when I couldn't even feed myself. That was just going to be my goal. And so I put that in front of myself and said, this is it. Now I did walk in. It wasn't pretty, but I did walk in standing with a walker, but I did get in there, like I said. Now my hope is hopefully to run by my 1 year mark. That's my next hope.
Wow. And when would that be?
It's going to be April 23rd, so it's coming up quickly. So I'm really having to push a little harder than usual.
How much mobility have you regained?
Well, I could move my toes about 3 weeks to a month after surgery. It wasn't till I believe 7 months that I was able to stand at a sink, to be able to stand, like stand up, sit down. Now I'm able to walk in a walker, but they've progressed now. Now I'm in what we call walking poles. So I'm able to walk in walking poles now. And I am what they call surf walking. So I'm surfing my couch, my table, my chair. And as long as I can reach and touch an object, I can walk through the house. Kind of shocked my daughter the other day. She was here to visit, and I walked all the way to the back patio, and she just looked at me like, what are you doing? But put a pretty big smile on my face, though. Running Again, it probably won't be pretty, but I'd like to do a 5K on that or near that date.
Wow. Even if you walked it, I would say that's a win.
That's my hope. I have a half mile under my belt now. That's my farthest distance. So I have some work to do.
You are so determined.
Yes. And I know that's hard on my family too, because sometimes I get frustrated and I'm angry because my progress is not where I want it to be, but they continue to try to sit me down and say, do you know where you just came from? And okay, I have to sit down and take a deep breath and realize where I came from and just be happy in the moment again, because this sort of thing really makes you stop and go, who knows if tomorrow is going to happen? And
Mm-hmm.
so I don't take a whole lot of things serious when I realize what serious is.
What's your legacy?
I think I would have to go back into teaching. I want my students to have remembered me as somebody that was there for them when other people weren't, and that they too could push through anything as long as they put their mind to it. At least get to a better place if they put their mind to it. This life is a journey, and there's going to be some really big bumps on the road, maybe bigger for some than others, but just keep on pushing through those things.
Are there any stories that students have come back to share with you of the influence that you've had in their lives?
You know, middle school is a weird place. They leave middle school and go on to high school, and I will remember them, but they get into high school and they get their high school teachers. They do come back and they do share things with me, but it was interesting because my daughter put a video together for me for in the hospital for people just well wishing me. And one of my students, Hector, was in the video. He had reached out to my daughter to say that he knew I was strong and I was going to get through this. And I haven't had him in class for about 20 years. So that was really great. I still have students sending me messages and checking in on me and asking to have lunch here and there. But again, once they get onto high school, they get their wings and they fly. There's still a few of them out there, and I will continue to stay in contact with them.
That's fantastic. And somebody who 20 years later remembers you, that to me, it sounds like you made an impact. What would you do on your last day?
The last day of life, I'd spend it with my family. They mean a lot. They have supported me through thick and through thin. It would be something as simple as just sharing a meal with them. And then I might go for a run.
That sounds great.
Yeah.
Do you have any final thoughts to share before we wrap up?
Hopefully, I can be an inspiration to someone. If all else, go outside and move. I feel like this time, even though I think we're seeing a light at the end of the tunnel here, but in such dark times, just get out there and move. Don't take it for granted. It's such a beautiful thing to have the ability to do.
Yes, so true.
I just appreciate you asking about me and just having me reflect on my own life a little bit. And it just makes it even more clear to me how beautiful it all is.
I'm absolutely thrilled to have had the opportunity to talk to you and for you to share this story, because I think it is so important. And I 100% agree to never take your mobility for granted, because it will disappear on you.
Yes, it will, whether it be in age or in tragedy, but just always go and just feel that wind on your face out there today. We have a beautiful sunny day in California. So yeah, get out there and move.
Thank you so much for this. And I wish you well in your continued journey to reach your full mobility. And I'd love to get a picture of you doing your run.
Sounds great.
What a privilege to have met you.
Thank you so much.
I look forward to receiving that picture of Kelly running her 5K. The many bumps she experienced and her determination to keep pushing through is a great reminder that even though you can't see the other side, to just keep going and to get outside and enjoy the sun on your face one more day in whatever way you can. Thank you for listening. Please subscribe, and if you feel someone else might benefit from listening to this episode, please share it. Leave a rating or review wherever you listen to your podcasts. Visit my website at www.lindamclaughlin.com. Until next time, My name is Linda McLaughlin in the arena.